Okay, we're streaming. We're live.
Right.
All right.
Well, isn't that a great day?
And here we go. All right. Welcome, everybody. I'm doing this. This is kind of a group thing. So I'm hosting here, but we thought we'd watch a cheesy Christian movie. I don't know that much about it, and I'm really not even hosting this. I'm just hosting the media side of this. But this was Marm's idea, so maybe Marm would like to give us a little bit of the backstory on this. But yeah,
Sure thing.
He owes it to all of us, frankly.
Yeah, I messed up so much. I was boomering it up. So everybody, I was watching my old Christian cartoons again. I found this one. I tweeted out, "Hey, I'd like to anybody interested in chatting about this cartoon." I made some new friends doing that, and my laptop froze this week. So Matt Krotz has heroically stepped in to host the show. Last time I tried this before my laptop issues kicked in, I was introducing people. This is some time has passed though, so let's go ahead and reintroduce everyone. So you might know him as the guy whose channel this is. He's Matt Krotz. He is a Christian comic book creator. He is currently funding. Kyrie Book 2 is still funding, right?
Yep. We're in demand until September.
Fantastic, and he's the hero of the hour today. Next, Artistic Layman is a Christian artist. I met him just as I was tweeting about this. Tell us a little bit about what you do, Artistic Layman.
Right now, I eventually make videos that involve Christian and entertainment commentary. In the meantime, I'm just working on other animation projects.
And have you ever seen this cartoon before?
I have, actually. I saw it way back when I was a youngster, and I remember liking it as a kid, but not quite so much now that I've gotten older.
Interesting. Next up, we've got Carl Toons. He is the creator. He does lots of drawings in a variety of styles. He was working on a comic called Hullgrave, which he's currently in the process of rebooting. Say hi, Carl.
Yo.
And you go by Carl Toons and Carl's Amateur Hour, right?
Yep.
Twitter, Instagram. He's a really cool guy. And Matt Reese is part of the creative team behind the Matriarchy. Let's see, you crowdfunded The Expositioner.
Yep. Solo Voce,
Yep.
which we're in the middle of production on, and I've been doing indie and web comics since 2005. 2006 is probably more accurate, with our little group Ideal Comics out of Western Nebraska. And I also my YouTube show is a weekly talk show, kind of like the Dick Cavett show or the old Tom Snyder show, which is totally makes me sound older than I am.
Yeah. You just turned into a 65-year-old.
Yeah, I'm about 10 to 15 years younger than I sounded just now. Yeah, but with that, just because they don't do that kind of talk show anymore, where people just sit around and discuss the issues of the day in a way that isn't supposed to be intentionally funny or combative. So, there you go. That's the Thursday nights, 7 Mountain Time, and this next week, Doug Ernst, and Dan Thacker will be on talking about the 7 deadly sins of crowdfunding.
Oh gosh!
Excellent.
Got to tune in.
That sounds useful. All right, so I will probably shamelessly steal this video from Matt Krotz, and when I host it on my channel, I will make sure to link to everybody so you can all go check them out. I have a little information on the Easter Promise, so I'll just go ahead and read that out. The Easter Promise was produced by the Christian Broadcasting Network, and it was released in 1996. It was directed by Angela Costello, who, while working with CBN, was twice nominated for the Annie Awards. She is also creator of the Christian children's series Storyteller Cafe. The original story for The Easter Promise was written by Brian Cochran. Character design and art direction was carried out by CBN's team in the United States. And the key animation was by Wang Film Productions in Taiwan. The same team has worked for many of the Disney Channel cartoons during the Disney afternoon era of the Disney Channel. They animated many of the direct-to-video Disney sequels in the 90s, and they continue to do animation work for big budget studios today. The overseas production was overseen by John Liu and Angela Costello. And also CBN claims that when The Easter Promise was nominated for the Annie, it was one of the first times that a Christian animated program was nominated for the award. So that's all my little historical info about this. And my one kind of like opening thought is, when I was a kid, I actually hated this movie because I was sad that Jesus died. Oh man!
Total.
And then I actually came to respect it a little. It's still cheesy, but I actually respect it more as an adult than I did when I was a little kid. So for me, it's a guilty pleasure.
Excellent.
All right, so that was all the intros I had, and I just want to thank everybody for being here. Thanks to Matt Kreitz especially for being the man of the hour.
Yeah, cool. Well, all right. So does everyone can everyone see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yes.
Yep.
I can see it.
Excellent.
And here's hoping
Presented in Dolby Surround Sound. Trademarked.
So now I'm thinking, so I was already at 54 seconds in. I'm wondering, oh wait, no. Never mind. Okay, yeah, 5 seconds in. All right, pressing play, and 3, 2, 1, now. And just so everyone knows, apparently Marm has tried to stream this before and hasn't had any issue, so I don't think we're going to have any copyright strikes.
Hopefully.
Martha.
Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would not have died.
Why is she bothering him now? Lazarus has been dead for 4 days.
Fear not, Martha. Your brother will live again.
He claims he can bring the dead back to life? Nonsense.
Yes, but look how many believe.
Thank you,
Like
Father,
the
for
Jafar
hearing my
Pharisee.
prayer.
And now he calls
He looks
God
like an
his
Animaniacs
father?
character.
This can't be true. It's blasphemy.
Roll away the
Although
stone.
Animaniacs' character is a lot better than most things.
His voice sounded familiar.
Lazarus, come forth.
Drama.
That scream was extreme. Although you have to wonder how
And let
they
him
would
go.
react.
Jesus has brought our brother back from the dead.
Yeah, I don't
What
think
can
of
we
applause
do?
either.
Soon
but
the whole nation will
it's
follow
kinda
this
nice to see it
man.
dramatic.
He must be stopped.
And what other acts
I like
of this
the
nature
I like the
can you
variety in the
report to
character design.
Sanhedrin?
Like each
With
member of
so
the
many
Pharisees and
believing in
Sadducees has their own
Jesus,
distinct
It
look.
is certain we will lose control over our people. And if we lose control, the Romans will take over. Our council will crumble, and we'll all be put to death.
It is better for this one man to die than it is for us to lose our control over the people.
What do you suggest, Caiaphas?
We must find a way to turn the people against Jesus now, while they're all coming here to celebrate our Passover holiday.
Yes.
Oh, that's a
but
little
how?
insidious there.
Jesus will be among them.
It's funny because wasn't
yes?
Caiaphas a bit
Certainly.
ambivalent?
Then,
by
while
the-
he's
in
in
the
the
back?
No, I mean,
find
well,
a reason to have him
Ephes
arrested.
was the guy who was the
Any reason.
But
the
so many
appointed
follow
ruler
him.
at the time.
They
He was
believe
younger
he is the
than
Messiah,
Annas. He was
the
Annas'
Son of God.
son-in-law, I think.
I only meant, sir, that we need to help
The actual
others.
like
Then
quote
find
is
them.
it's
Do whatever
better
it
for
takes.
one man to die than for the
Pay
nation to
whatever it
perish.
costs to find someone to
And,
assist us.
there's,
Anyone willing to help
necessarily a
turn the
political
against him.
opinion behind
And I'll
that.
see to it that
Yeah.
this troublemaker Jesus
In
is
the
dealt
Passion of the
with.
Christ, he's the robe in the robe that tears his robe when he hears Jesus speak.
That's
Be careful, Jared.
that's in the,
Mama warned you not to get into
chicken
trouble.
account too, I think.
Worrying. I've done
Yep.
this 1,000 times. Hurry up, Elizabeth.
Elizabeth.
Hey, what are you doing? Go on, scat.
Take the mullet.
Yeah.
Move faster, you fools!
We should have been selling all morning.
Yes, Amen, sir. Help me with this cart, you know.
You can kind of tell they had a strong, like, Disney general inspiration. Like, all the characters have, like, really clear, you know, like, distinct shapes to them. Like, big, strong guy, you know, small, sneaky guy.
Oh, what?
That's the way you're supposed to make them.
Yeah.
What year was this again?
Dares to.
1996.
That's the year before I was born.
Okay, the one thing I will say is that the slapstick in this movie is fantastic.
It's a wild beast!
The dog. That's the best.
Hey, you idiots!
Okay. Hey, nice kitty.
Oh my gosh.
You stupid mutt! I'll get you!
Hey, stop! He's just a dog. Samson, watch out!
Oh.
Yow!
Oh.
Goose egg. That's classic, man.
The voice actor for that guy.
You cursed brat! Come down here this instant!
Wait!
I want to
he's
draw
dumb.
like a dude with like a, he's got that chimpanzee kind of face, like the tiny nose and the really
You little
long upper
devil!
lip.
I'll get you. I'll.
Sorry.
You will be sorry if I ever get my hands on you. I
Oh my
swear
gosh.
it.
What are they setting up? This is
No good.
I don't get.
Sit
How is
around,
this gonna
guys.
pay off?
The screenplay just said Middle Eastern merchant on it.
Gee, no. It was an
You found a
accident.
screenplay for this?
That was a joke.
Way! Make
I got
way!
Insert
Wow,
Middle Eastern merchant
That's
here.
what I want to be.
But Jerome, that's awful what they're doing to that man.
Jerome.
I love how Jerem is totally
Jerem,
into
let's
crucifixion at age 9.
So
Yeah.
powerful.
For crimes of thievery. This man before you, Damus of Bethany, has been condemned to death. Soldier, carry out the sentence.
That's a bit extreme.
Wow.
Jeremiah.
Now I should be expecting a scream.
Mama, can't we do something to help that poor man?
I wish we could.
Mama, you should have seen the soldiers. They were so strong and...
Shh.
You can
There's
kind
someone
of tell
here to
whenever they
see
mention
you.
that someone's dead, they sort of linger over the word.
Jerome.
Like, it was still a little taboo to
I'm
mention the word
stronger
death
than
in
you
cartoons
No, you're
in this
not.
era.
Yes, I am. Then why are you on the bottom? It's part of my plan to tire you out.
They're just roughhousing while dude is dying in the
Uncle
background.
Jacob!
Well, what have we here?
Now, Jerem, be easy on your uncle.
Yeah.
Little nephew, it's so good to see you.
It's funny, like, because they're taking so many
Who is
shortcuts.
this?
That's my dog, Samson.
It's almost like it almost has.
Samson, is it?
Yeah, I heard the story
Like, how can we
once about a man who was
reuse, you know,
big
just
and
kind of like
strong
rock
and
back
had
and
long
forth
hair,
between a few
just
frames?
like my dog. So I named him
Lower
Samson.
The West
frame
Coast
rate
style.
tricks, yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
Jerem,
yeah, frame
I
rate
think the real Samson could see where he was going.
Uncle Jacob, I saw soldiers riding
yeah,
on
back in the
horses
day we
10
had
feet
cells.
tall,
10 feet tall, huh?
wearing armor and carrying swords.
He doesn't realize yet the Romans are our enemies.
A soldier, I must know how to fight.
You mean you're not going to be a fine potter like
That was
your
like
father?
a Shakespearean aside there.
Maybe after I become a famous
Rosencrantz
soldier
and
first.
Guildenstern moment.
Then prepare yourself,
That one
Jerem,
is most,
for a king
not
is
the
coming to
most
Jerusalem.
interesting
And he
aspect
will be in need of
about
some
the
very
character design.
special
The
soldiers.
skin
A real
tones are like
king.
all over.
Jesus of Nazareth.
The Messiah
So like
is coming
one thing
here?
that
To
really
celebrate
annoys
the
me is that
Passover.
people try to like the first century
is
Jews
this
as all being
shit?
like one color.
Yeah.
Historically, they were like they were practically multi-ethnic. So yeah, there was been a lot of proselytization in the first century before and after Christ. You know,
Absolutely.
And Rome had helped kind of like bring lots of different ethnicities into like the Pax Romana.
yeah. Even within Jewry itself.
And thus we're introduced to the musical.
Yeah, it's always funny, like.
Can you restore my sight?
That's right.
What?
Yeah, you need. It is kind of like a Fiddler on the Roof moment.
That's how mighty is our King. He cares for the hungry, ministers to the sick. That's why so many people are coming to see.
Pays for the apple, but still makes an enormous mess. He's conscientious.
Once he was traveling on the sea. A storm threatened their safety. As the people cried, he told the storm to subside. That's how mighty is our King.
Oh, it's like a, what was that, Psalm 107? I think I was just reading that the other day.
His message brings us hope.
I remember really liking this part because not because of the song, because I realized he was describing events we couldn't see directly. There's something I like about that, like in things like Ben-Hur. Where we have allusions to other events we're familiar with.
Right. This is completely from Jerem's perspective. So the fact that he hasn't heard about Jesus, by not showing that reinforces that this is Jerem's story. Just because as an aside, I really like how Jerem is a little boy who's obsessed with, big and strong soldiers. So his initial interest in Jesus is that people say Jesus is big and strong, but he's expecting Jesus to be like a warrior king, just like the Jews were expecting the Messiah to be a king who would liberate them from Rome. It's kind of like a nut of what the Jews were expecting. So I think that's a nice little writing touch.
It is.
It like personalizes it into a particular narrative lens, I guess.
Why hide?
I don't get this. I'm very into these cranky merchants.
Who's that? Romulus?
And like they seem to have a legitimate grievance. I mean, like their livelihood's been shattered, and it's like they're just bummed out.
Why?
Well, but they knocked the cart over themselves while the kid was just in the tree the whole time.
Everything and only the finest quality.
Save your pitch for the unsuspecting public, Eamon.
But of course, dear Romulus, how
That
may
was
I be
cold.
of service to you?
I kind of want to steal that. That's pretty
Strong
good.
young boys to add to my staff of servants.
Sure, but I think that guy might be bad.
Slaves.
Well, the way he lingered on my
The young boys.
servants.
Yeah, that's a little creepy.
Super creepy.
I'm not sure why would he buy the slaves here to have them draw to Rome.
Well, except they were running out of slaves in Rome. They just didn't sell.
Expenses here.
I think that guy buys all of his home goods from Wayfair.
There will be much more once I have my merchandise.
Ow!
I leave for Rome within the week, and I will not depart empty-handed. I trust you will not disappoint me. I am not accustomed to being disappointed.
On my word as an honest businessman, my lord, you shall have your slaves by week's end.
Jerem, hurry up.
They are
Everyone
layering
else is
in the
on you. Let
subplots
the
on
hero
this.
come
That's
on.
fairly
Just a
impressive.
minute. I'm
Yeah,
trying
an
to
entirely
put my
original
armor
secondary story
more
going
like
on.
a
Or I guess this is the
walking
primary.
barrel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, also you've got like,
It would be a wonderful thing.
Oh God, this poor voice actor can't sing.
yes, but he can't sing on purpose. I think.
Oh gosh.
My dog does that too.
I mean, at least he's got humble goals. Like, he doesn't want to be the king, just a guard for the king.
Yeah.
That's pretty legit.
I have a feeling he's about to be something for someone, but I don't know. Slave for a centurion?
That was a little impressive maneuver there, throwing their spears up in the air.
I was gonna say that's having done a little bit spears. That's not really possible.
You? A
can't really
guard
do
for a king?
So is that dude a pothead or what?
We're here to see the king. Samuel, grab a sharp stone.
I'm warning you, Jerome. If you start throwing rocks...
Don't worry, Elizabeth.
This must be the tallest tree in all of Jerusalem.
From here, you can even see inside the temple. There. Make your mark next to ours.
It's okay, Elizabeth. Just don't look down. Thanks, Samuel.
God, I thought that was a laugh track starting, and I was just like, wait, what?
The king's chariot.
Well, excuse me, princess.
My mother tried to tell you that. You can't
fly.
tell my brother anything.
Oh, Caiaphas won't be happy. Jesus has more followers than ever.
But how many will follow him after he is dead?
Hail to the king!
There, I told
Hail King Jesus!
Where is he? I can't see.
There's a little foreshadowing, I think, yeah?
Come on
We
down,
killed him.
little
Yeah.
warrior. Protect your king. The king of...
So something I like about this is the Roman soldier was the guy he admired, and now the Roman soldier's like totally roasting and humiliating him.
Behold your king.
Jesus?
Oh man.
He's not a king of battle. He has no weapon.
Some king.
We bow to you, almighty king.
Yeah, wait for the sequel.
A king rides on not donkeys. Everyone's laughing at him. Even the soldiers.
Father says he's the king of kings.
Are you trying to fool me too, Samuel?
Jerome, be quiet.
You're taking the stupid armor off.
Well, that's probably a smart move, I'll be completely honest.
Oh, no, it is. Oh, yes. Oh.
Curb Your Enthusiasm music plays.
Child.
I was going to say the JoJo music, but...
You're better now.
You're already dead.
Stop laughing at me. Leave me alone. I don't need your help.
Your Jesus feelings.
Wow. When I saw this as a kid, that one really got me. Because I knew Jesus was important, but then when I see him just seem off like that after being basically brought back to life, I was like, oh wow, that was impressive.
But his kingdom is different. I should have explained.
This is no king. You tricked me.
Those are some great expressions, but I really am having a hard time believing those particular people would care.
Leave me alone.
You see, we're not the only ones who can see through this false king, Jesus.
You're right. But this man has fooled so many people with his lies.
Well, why are people saying Jesus is a king?
And you don't believe that?
A king doesn't ride on donkeys.
You are very wise for one so young.
I am?
I should say so. But don't you agree?
Oh, indeed.
So many of the people are being tricked by this deceiver. But not you. You see through his deception. Like us. He is nothing but a troublemaker and a fraud.
Yes. If only we could find someone brave and clever enough to help get rid of this false king before
The
he
fat
tricks.
Pharisee looks like a commentary YouTuber.
Yeah, I was trying to place it.
Well, what about me?
Now,
That's great.
idea.
Cartoons these days.
Use a brave little soldier like you. What do you say?
That caught me off guard, dude.
The chin beard is a nice touch.
Yeah. Just rocking the Donegal beard.
Or neck beard. Yeah.
Pretty decent background.
Sir, perhaps
Perhaps I could interest you in? This temple is supposed to be a house of prayer, not of merchandise. Please, sir. I'm only here because
Did
the
he
priests of the temple have allowed
That was a pretty fly pose he did.
Yeah, it was. Jesus also, like, I got the impression that he just disdained the entire sacrificial system. Not the money changing component.
Oh, where are my...
He's like, get these birds out of here. Like, what are you going to do with them?
Introduced to my associates.
Instead of the Den of Thieves, that was a interesting edit.
Yeah.
His name is Dorcas.
Oh, are you serious? He's
which is a woman's name.
Let's see. First, you assaulted me.
I think he's my favorite right now.
Then you ruined all my goods. But now, you are about to make me a lot of money as a slave in Rome, you devilish brat.
So this dude's he's got his vendetta figured out, right? But what about all the other slaves?
Yeah. Oh man, stampede of animals.
He's actually caused a stampede in this one. Wow.
Where's the whip? Well, maybe the whip is coming. The whip is what I'm
they
looking
don't have
forward
it.
to.
No, gotta drink to that now.
There were camels in there? He's just...
Jesus is upsetting the entire
Camels are not kosher. They should not have been in there. That's
like,
This madman is destroying
I'm getting
our place
interesting
of
signals
worship.
here. Him getting rid of all the
Whatever
animals.
shall we do? Who is this Jesus that he ruins the hard work of so many?
Someone has to do something.
I gotta warn people about Jesus.
Oh wait, so are they setting it up so that this kid goes around rabble rousing and is the reason for the crowds turning on the
What is all of the
Herod
excitement?
at a Pilate's trial?
Jesus is tearing up the temple.
Just before he gets enslaved.
Yeah, I think so.
Chasing out those who sell
Wow,
their goods
that's
there.
dark, man.
It is.
Oh yeah.
I ran through the street shouting, telling everyone.
Well done, young sir.
Sadducee's whole plan rests on one 9-year-old kid.
Soon be rich.
What's this for?
Soldiers must be paid for their services. Now,
I mean, they're taking
keep up the
risks.
good
I
work, but
appreciate this.
Don't tell anyone you have spoken to us. Consider this a secret mission. Agreed?
A secret mission?
It's another thing where I think they're taking a Bible idea and trying to like put it in 9-year-old terms. Like, why did Judas betray Jesus? So they simplify it to the point of like a boy who likes to pretend he's a soldier and he gets one coin, whereas like Judas is maybe a more mature idea of betrayal.
Gerald?
Yeah.
A soldier has duties to perform.
What are you talking
Yeah.
about?
Yeah, I guess he's embodying
Sorry, that's confidential.
a lot of
Well,
the
obviously,
gospel
you
elements.
spoke to. You two
Well, and I think that
too many questions.
Yeah, well, this is intended for children audiences, so they have to bring the kids in somehow.
Yeah.
Also, well, that's the theory anyway.
I thought they'd just be like observing the events, but I'm surprised that,
Not to be
that they're
trusted.
Tell me,
kind of
Jesus,
accelerating.
is
them.
it permissible to pay taxes to Caesar?
Hand me that coin.
Shiny coin.
Well, Rabbi, answer me. Is it permissible to pay taxes to Caesar?
Whose face is on this coin?
Caesar's, of course.
Then give to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, but give to God the things that are God's.
He chooses his words wisely.
Quiet.
Jerem, may
Nope.
I join you?
He just had
Your
an
father's
epiphany
words
about that scripture.
Is it me?
We all bear the image of God,
Soldier, but not for a man who
right?
rides
The
a
whole the
donkey.
Imago Dei, right?
Everyone was
Yeah, to give your
laughing
whole
at me.
person to God.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
I shouldn't have let you run off the way you
Yeah,
did.
that's a nice touch.
You
I had never
expected a
thought
king
about it in
dressed
those
for
terms
battle,
before.
and so you wore your armor. You see, Jesus'
Yeah, I think
kingdom is
that-
not
that-
of this
I
world.
feel like that was kind of
His weapons aren't swords or
demonstrated
spears. He speaks
subtly,
the truth,
but
and
well
the truth can be
here,
a very
which is
powerful
kinda
weapon,
nice. I
Jeremy.
think that kind of came through.
A weapon?
Oh.
That makes no sense, Uncle Jacob.
So unrealistic, that branch would break. Look at that size of that guy.
I'm surprised he was able to climb the tree at all.
Things about Jesus.
That's fair.
So
It's all muscle.
trees are
Always be
different, you
careful
know.
who you listen to. And
It is a
They don't
cartoon
break.
tree.
They don't break unless they're 2D, and everything else is 3D looking.
Yeah.
If it's part of the
always be
background, it
careful who
doesn't
you
break.
listen to and who you put your trust in.
It just me, or does it feel like 10 frames are missing from every shot?
Yeah.
This man, Jesus of Nazareth,
Yeah,
has been
there's a
accused
lot of,
of
like, rapid
masquerading
cuts.
as a king. And for this crime, Jesus, you have been sentenced to death. Soldier,
Oh yeah, this scene is intense.
carry out the sentence.
Oh.
Quite a vision. Oh my gosh.
I said, carry out the sentence. Crucify him!
Which is again, it's him dreaming of being a soldier and getting what he wants, and realizing that's at odds now with how he's starting to feel about Jesus.
Jerem's up to something, and we're gonna find out what it is.
Nosy sister always getting in the way.
There needed to be a scene where the other kids had more time with Jesus.
Right. Like, it's mostly Jerem's story.
Hmm.
I don't know. I kind of like resonate with like the bossy sister, troublemaking boy aspect of it. I think a lot of kids would identify with that.
Are you ready for your next assignment?
Yeah, well, sort
Yeah, the other two kids kind of like
Well-
Jesus, right?
Well, it's
But
just
they're
that.
kind of
Right.
What if we're
yeah.
wrong? About
Of course,
Jesus?
they don't have a lot of
I
time on
I'm not
them, so we
saying
can't
he's
see them
king
interact with them.
exactly, but
So, we have a traitor among us.
Is your army in the habit of recruiting children? Isn't my help enough for you?
My friend, one can never have enough help with such matters.
Why bring a child into this plot against Jesus?
Sam, what's going on?
what are you doing here, Elizabeth? Go home. I'm just saying that maybe Jesus isn't a bad person.
You no longer have to concern yourself with Jesus. Go home.
But what's happening?
Enough of this little fool. We have work to do.
But what about Jesus?
He will soon be finished, as will you and your friends if you utter a single word of these matters. Now, scat.
Come on!
I can't mention the last time I was told scat in polite company.
Yeah. It was interesting to see
Well,
Judas.
runt. Look at your grand
Like they could have drawn him like a, a hand-wringing villain like everyone else, but they didn't.
No, they made him reasonably handsome.
Yeah.
This tree will be perfect for the next criminal we hang from it.
Guess who that's gonna be?
Yep.
Ooh.
Foreshadowing.
Was their movie.
Because you're my
Barabbas?
I'm still thinking about it. Is
I have a cheesy cartoon starring Barabbas too. If we want to do another of these.
Oh my gosh! Really? Wow.
Because
Truth be told, the only thing I dislike about this show is the kids' presentation. That's it. Because they just can't present their dialogue better.
Come on, we've got to find Jesus.
Why?
We have to warn him.
You mean in terms of the voice acting or in terms of the script?
Well, the voice acting, really. The presentation is just so obnoxious.
Remember how the Lord
Right,
told us to
right.
place the blood of a lamb at the door of our house?
It is kind of boilerplate, like Saturday morning,
taking the firstborn
kind of
sons of our enemies.
live-action TV show kind of thing.
We'll never find Jesus
With the
this
voice acting.
way. If only we knew where to look.
The adults are great, though.
Can't stop now.
Yeah.
A soldier never quits, Elizabeth.
Jerem! Jerem!
What is it?
I think I found him. Come on, follow me.
Jesus has been quiet this evening. Perhaps something troubles him. Here on earth you too will have many trials and sorrows. But cheer up, for I have overcome the world. I tell you this because in a little while you won't see me any longer, and then in a little while you will.
What does he mean, in a little while we won't see him, and then we will? I don't know.
You know, if you're going to violate the second commandment, at least do it with some better designs.
I will be sad in the end, but I will see you again.
Do we have a Reformed Presbyterian here?
You shall rejoice.
How can he make such a promise? He's a
Relatable.
king, Elizabeth. A king's word is his promise.
Jerem, that man. He's the one who was with the Pharisees.
Give Judas a real chin in this.
One of you shall betray me. Is it I?
Is it I, Lord?
He that dips his hand with me in the dish shall be the one who betrays me.
Master, is it I that will betray you?
Judas, go. Do what you must.
We've got to warn Jesus.
Jerem, what do you think you're doing?
I've got to tell
So
the
see,
truth.
the way they set
and
that
stop
up,
that man.
I suppose, like maybe Judas didn't hear Jesus say that, so he's like, I'm gonna go ahead and dip while I'm asking.
I mean, that's something you always wonder, right? Like,
Well, everyone else did in this scene, so it could have been anyone at that point. So he was just trying to play with the crowd.
You're
I guess
about
everyone's
to
supposed
begin
to
a
think,
new
yeah.
life.
Yeah, I think
course,
that's part of the Seder, where everybody, you know,
Cyrus, pack up these
there's
3
their
fine
various
pieces of
elements, and the various elements being what part of the meal it
merchandise
is.
to
So
Romulus
it's
that I filled his
it really wasn't a very good clue.
Don't cry, Elizabeth.
Although, even from the description of the Bible, it's always such a surreal scene about having a Judas be there and Jesus kind of basically calling him out implicitly and no one else getting it.
Yeah. And no one like trying to stop him as if they didn't hear or didn't make all the connections somehow.
Or were they able to like even put 2 and 2 together on what he was talking about, right?
Yeah.
Like they might not
never
have expected.
They never have. If there's one thing it consists about the disciples, that they never listened to him.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, Jesus has been talking blatantly about his death for months before. Like, you can't go to Jerusalem, Jesus, they're going to kill you. And he's like, no.
So what you're saying is,
killed.
so what you're saying is, you're going to free us from Roman oppression.
The Son of God.
It's kind of like, I always assumed, you know, with evidence, I think, that it's sort of a purposeful veiling of their eyes so that they won't see and they won't be able to do anything.
Off with him. Take him.
I think some of it, I think
nice
there's
one, Fly
probably,
Fox.
I do believe there's some of that, but I think also the fact that they were just so, like, I mean, they were bros, you know? I mean, they 3 years, you know, living in the fields and things. I don't think that a lot of them had the emotional capacity to believe that Christ was just going to walk in, you know, to the middle of trouble and let them just nail him to a cross. I don't think that any of them could believe that was possible. No. You know,
It was a humiliation. It's the worst death.
Yeah, and it's like there's no way. You obviously, like Peter said, I mean, you're obviously God. Nobody else has the words of life. You're teaching us something. This is a metaphor, right?
By the way, the lyrics of this song, are never consistent in how
How come he is? Why do they choose now to have a song?
Yeah, what about this moment in particular warrants a musical number?
I mean, I like the deep "We Choose Barabbas" because that like has the music underscore like the evil of the moment nicely.
Oh my gosh, I love the Barabbas design.
It looks like Pigpen from the Grateful Dead.
Yeah. That's who it is. Or the drummer in Led Zeppelin.
My generosity you may exploit. That's an interesting choice of terms.
Yeah.
Right.
They really leaned into Pilate looking Italian, which you know makes sense. It makes sense.
That's fair.
Move over, Andrew Lloyd Webber. There's a new Jesus Christ rock opera on the horizon.
My generosity you may exploit. One will win life, the other lose. The guilty or the innocent, which one will you?
I was kind of hoping for like a "What is truth?" Dialogue moment, but I guess.
Right, that's such a good moment.
What is truth, baby? Don't hurt me.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite scenes.
And it always struck me that's one of the scenes for some reason that lasted with me with the passion.
The blood of Jesus be upon
really well
your
done.
heads.
It really does portray Pilate as just really indifferent to the whole scenario. It's like, why am I being dragged in the middle of all this? I'm just watching over the occupation.
Here's your crown.
And he was actually procurator twice.
But it was kind of a backwoods region to be a procurator for, right?
Yeah. I think the first time he was working his way up, and the second time he was working his way down.
Yeah.
That's my understanding of history.
Blood and cartoons now.
This is the
this is the part that traumatized me.
This is the only place blood is allowed in American cartoons.
Oh God, what have I done? I've betrayed an innocent man.
See those guts spilling.
You're gonna show the part where yeah, you're gonna show the part where he hangs himself.
Yeah.
We're not doing that.
Today.
That would be a little bit too much.
Just like a nice painted silhouette of him hanging.
I seem to remember having seen a cartoon of this with a silhouette of him hanging.
Oh gosh.
Back in the 80s.
Would it have been Hanna-Barbera?
I don't remember.
Amazing.
I wouldn't even remember.
Hanna-Barbera, he would be blonde and blue-eyed in that one.
How should I know?
Yeah, it was a really long time ago.
I'm sleeping.
My memory is probably older than you are.
If you
Yeah.
were sleeping,
Big fan of these guys.
would you be
I think they're
talking
the.
to me?
They're very
Sleeping, would you be
animated.
talking?
Yeah.
Sleeping. So go check it out.
You always need like a small, cranky, wise guy, and then a big, dumb, gentle giant.
They're kind of the body types of Popeye and Bluto too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, down to the chins and everything.
Yeah.
Cheryl, watch out!
They're so awful.
They trip over them both.
That'd kill a person right there.
Easy work for the soldier of a king. Or a kid with a lot of
Oh
luck.
my God.
Untie us! Come on, hurry up! We've
Sleep
got to
cells.
warn Jesus!
Oh wow.
It has their marks on it. It's literally their tree branch.
Wow. Nice touch.
Is there nothing we
I
can
could see this
do?
would be pretty compelling as a kid.
Nothing.
Wow.
Hasn't he had enough pain?
Don't interfere, or I'll have you arrested.
Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do.
Oh, strong textual variant there. Probably not original.
Lord, remember me when you enter your kingdom.
Truly, I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise.
I like how they made their voices strained
We're
here.
too late.
That's good.
Look what they've done.
It's a good touch.
Done anything. Let him go.
What do you think of your king now, boy?
Let him go. Let him go.
Let's go home, son.
But Father, Jesus promised we'd all rejoice. He
John,
promised.
there is nothing we can do.
No, for it being a cartoon, they did put a lot of effort into making it seem very painful. And
I commit my spirit.
Yeah, there's nothing
Right,
cheesy
they're not-
about this.
Yeah, it's
like some of it is probably from like a limited budget, but you can tell that they actually cared about what they did.
Oh yeah.
yeah. There was a lot of effort put into this.
One of the benefits of this kind of animation, though, because they wouldn't be able to cut the cheat out the emotion.
I've had enough of you.
Oh wow.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's taking some liberties.
Yes.
Would you
Street
believe that's
shield.
not? Would you believe that's not the most dramatic instance I've seen of people going straight to hell in a children's cartoon?
In a cartoon.
He's dead.
Somebody help me understand why they would do this to an innocent man. He never hurt anyone.
Sorry, not a great time to laugh, but you don't just take a person down from a cross like that.
It's just like a one dude goes up there and
It's like a Velcro tab.
oh, our first yarmulke of the movie.
Yeah, like I said, the children's presentation is the worst part.
Like even the
I
song.
do like,
You know.
Yeah.
I do like they gave Elizabeth a song because she's been a character this whole time, but she hasn't really had an arc. So they're kind of fleshing her out a bit.
Yeah, that's
here.
what we were talking about earlier. Like they don't have time with her. She hasn't time with Jesus to know this.
Like it'd have been better to have her as like not just a viewpoint character for girls, but maybe have have a different type, because there are different ways people respond to Jesus throughout their life. If Jerem kind of has a negative response to Jesus, you could like tie in Elizabeth with sort of like, I don't know, like the Mary Magdalene type of character. Try to contextualize that for a little girl.
Oh wow, 3 X's.
Oh yeah, like the 3 crosses. Now I'm making that connection.
Oh, I did not. Even better.
They're all X's, which are crosses. That's
Wow.
And she's a better singer. Like Jerem's voice actor suffered a lot in, staying on key.
This tree isn't as tall as our other one. But it's nice to watch the sunrise from here.
I gotta go now. My parents want to get home before it gets too hot.
Goodbye, cousin.
Goodbye, Jerem.
Goodbye, Samuel. Hope we see you soon.
Me too. Look, somebody's coming.
No! No! Angels! Angels! The tomb!
He said something about the tomb.
That's where they buried Jesus. Come on.
the guy mentions angels.
Is he dead? Maybe somebody planned to.
The room is just over here.
Quick, hide.
Don't be frightened, Mary. I know you were looking for Jesus who was crucified, but he isn't here. Now, go quickly.
It kind of feels like
and
Angel
tell his
Moroni or
disciples
something.
that Jesus is risen from the
Yeah, I was
dead.
gonna say, there's a white and delightsome thing going on.
Yeah, it's a little white
Keep his
delay.
promise.
See, it looked to me like the guy showed up to like do his to do his workout routine. They were gonna like deadlifts, and they were waiting for the resurrection, and then like just got ahead of them, and they're like, well, I guess
they're really rushing the ending now.
Yeah, that was quick.
Like there could be like a really good like parallel between Jerem going out to warn people about Jesus and then Jerem going out to tell people about Jesus. You can tell they're just trying to get to the end of their runtime as fast as they can.
Child, we
paid you to keep quiet.
Well, I don't work for you anymore.
Well, he's getting, I guess that's the tie-in. They could have
There's a
done
trend
more.
with the money back to the Pharisees. That'd be a dark twist.
What's that about the Pharisees?
I said, if there's a trend with giving money back to the Pharisees, there might be a dark twist here for Jared.
Oh, these guys.
Haha, they're gonna be
Now they're
slaves.
slaves. Gerard the completionist.
What did I tell you?
Go into all the world and
Jesus,
preach the good news to make disciples of all nations.
No, you said there was a guy who was a completionist for some reason.
I totally remember him.
And be sure of this.
It's very
I will be with you
2015 of
always, even until the end of the world.
I do like that they didn't show the resurrection as what the Gospels is. They don't explicitly describe the resurrection, even though that'd be like a really dramatic thing.
No one would be.
Wow, they skipped straight to him ascending.
Right. Go for it.
They could at least have a moment where Jeremy runs into Jesus after he's resurrected.
I did like he ascended in front of a ton of people, and I remember someone pointed out at some point that the context of him speaking with a bunch of disciples, not just with his inner 12 or 11, implies
the road to Emmaus, the women.
Yeah.
I mean, even like the people in the upper room were that would have been like a whole group of folks that had traveled down. That was pretty standard practice for people to rent large rooms that would come down from Galilee or from Ethiopia or wherever, Passover, and have a whole tourist industry just based around. It was like Cheyenne for Frontier Days, Cheyenne, Wyoming for Frontier Days. The whole town like doubles or triples in size for Passover.
And, 1 Corinthians says, then he appeared to more than 500 brothers at one time. So that's not even counting the women and children that might have been there as well.
Mm-hmm. And that might have been the ascension moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's that.
Cool. That was fun. Do we do like a post?
I think we have to, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, FlyFox Pro, comic artist, has joined us just as we started the stream. So thanks for joining us, FlyFox.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
cricket noise.
But watching this now, I remember. Oh yeah, this is what I liked as a kid.
So artistic layman, like you were kind of like the opposite of me, where you found it like cheesier as an adult, and you had some like criticisms that were going on. Do you have any like?
My only criticism now is just the presentation. Honestly, if there was just a way to like tweak up the kids' presentation, that would have been better. And of course, the songs are questionable.
Like maybe get like an older voice actor, like a 16-year-old who can still do like a convincing 13-year-old. Like you can tell from their voices, like these are actual little kids voicing the characters. So it gives them authenticity.
That may be a point for authenticity, but it's not entertaining.
Right. Like an actor actually has to kind of like feel the emotion. You can kind of tell when they're sad about Jesus. It's like, why he didn't say that this would happen, right? Like you can tell it's a little kid who's affecting sadness rather than like an actor who is, I don't know, like feeling the emotion of sadness. So we sense it.
I think part of the thing is like in terms of the narrative structure of it all, they say that Jesus said these things, but we didn't see him say those things. And we didn't see him say anything about it because he's such a small character prior to, the arrest. They spent more time on the clearing of the temple than on any other element besides the actual crucifixion in the screenplay. And I think that actually hinders the effectiveness of the emotional reactions of the characters.
Like maybe seeing Jesus speak with the disciples would bring home the other side of it. Like we saw him, like what we see him do. We saw him overturn the money changers' tables. We saw him, use the parable of the coin, but we didn't see an aspect of Jesus for why his disciples love him. We we didn't get much of a chance to see why the kids have an emotional love for him. And some of these things, it's like it's a good direction, but I don't know, maybe like the benefit of 10 more minutes of a runtime would have given them like a chance to.
I was going to say the same thing, like 10 minutes to the runtime. And I think it seemed like, especially towards the end, every shot needed 2 to 5 more seconds. Like it felt like at one point, like I was like, man, did I drink a bunch of alcohol and have no idea about it? Like it felt like it was just rushing through everything.
Yeah, I noticed that too, especially near the end. Like there was a lot of quick cuts in the beginning and the middle as well, but especially at that ending, it felt like they condensed an ending that was actually meant to be longer into a much shorter time frame.
Yeah.
It could be budget stuff too.
Yeah.
Although it was 45 minutes now, so I mean, you have to be very selective about having other characters that are outside the story and having the main characters in the story, and so you have to be very selective about what you show.
Well, and that's like the slavery subplot didn't really get addressed very well, and even the scabbarousness of those merchants is pretty much just a lark. It seems like if they were gonna take the time to include those guys and not give them the proper attention within the story, that they could have, taken some of the other characters and given them a little more meat. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. They add comic relief, but they actually don't affect the course of what happens much. Like Jerem's subplot with the Pharisees is interesting because it parallels Judas's story and kind of ties in with the action. Like the slave subplot, you could almost take that out and it wouldn't affect the overall effect of the plot.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the point with that is that they had to create some sort of situation where Jerome would be captured and wouldn't be able to warn Jesus.
Right.
And the thing about that is it kept getting to me. And like I kept thinking, if they're going to show up and warn Jesus, Jesus is going to be turned around as like, no, man, this is the plan. Right?
Yeah, fear not.
That might have been better. That might have actually been a better development.
If Jesus says, no, I, just like he did in the garden, I'm not looking forward to this, but this is the only way,
Oh,
you have to wonder
if the kid snuck into Garden of Gethsemane. Oh, wow, that would have been an interesting twist.
Yeah.
You have to wonder, like, how much leeway do they have with Jesus scenes? Like, is it okay do they think it's okay to have the kids, witness Jesus, but are they maybe worried about having the kids interact with Jesus that much? Because that creates the problem of, you're creating a fake biblical narrative. Like, this is the problem Superbook had. Superbook had the problem where the kids would interact with Bible characters, and then parents would complain that this is changing the Bible story. So they changed it to have the kids almost completely uninvolved with the Bible plot.
And I would argue that. I mean, I could see that from Superbook, but at the same time, it's pretty. I mean, you don't have to be very smart to know there weren't any toy robots in the Bible narrative. So,
isn't that always a tension? Like, I thought it was funny. I just assumed that this was gonna get. I didn't grow up in an evangelical background, so I never knew about any of this stuff, and I just kind of assumed that the kids would be interacting in like almost like a parallel dimension where they wouldn't be allowed to impact the actual gospel narrative. But it was interesting to see, like, Jesus heals the main kid, stuff like that.
Well, I mean, that's kind of what I'm talking about, though. Is like that they couldn't have impacted the main biblical narrative, right?
Yeah.
Because like even if they would have gotten there and warned Jesus,
theologically they could.
But even beyond that, like look at when the Bible guard shows up and Judas kisses him on the cheek and the whole thing, and Peter's like, "You're not taking my Jesus," and he cuts Malchus's ear off, right? Jesus turns to him and is like, "Honestly, man, what are you thinking? What's your sword away? Just go. Just go. I'll fix this guy. We'll talk about it later, Pete." Right?
One of the smartest things,
taking some liberties, but
one of the smartest things is they sometimes have the kids there and observing, but not able to change events, which I feel would be like realistic if you're a little kid. Like, you can object to something, but no one's going to listen to you, right? Like, so if you imagine they show up at the garden, right? You could imagine the kid saying, "No, don't take away Jesus," and then Peter actually becomes kind of like a parallel to the kids, where Peter feels the same way. Peter tries to intervene, and Jesus censors him, and then you could have the kids like say, "Well, gee, why did he stop Peter from saving him?" Right? Like the kids would be powerless to do anything. Peter would be trying to assert that power as an adult, but not even he has the power to do it. And I feel like they did that sometimes throughout the show, like by having Jerem kind of like witness Jesus turning over tables, by having Jerem witness the plot to turn Jesus over to the Romans. I just feel like they could have been a bit more consistent about having that theme, I don't know, to help make Jesus more of a character in their lives, basically. It is a really intelligent solution, I think, to have them witnessing the events but not able to change the events.
Yeah, it should have taken the more Ben-Hur route, where the careful perspective is always on him, and we never see anything that's not Outsay's perspective. That would have been a whole lot better development.
Yeah.
Overall, that would have been an interesting approach to things. Yeah. But...
So I have a follow-up question. Can you name cheesier children's Christian cartoons than this one?
Sure, I can, but I can't think of them at the minute.
Wasn't there a Joseph and his coat of many colors?
Yeah, there was a follow-up to.
See, a lot of the names of those cartoons kind of blend together.
And like anytime I try to think of the Joseph story, I can't remember what they called it, because the only thing I can remember is the Broadway musical, the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat.
Yeah, it was King of Dreams.
King of Dreams.
Yeah. Thank you.
And that suffered from a big budget reduction from Prince of Egypt. Yeah.
Prince of Thieves was, not Prince of Thieves. Prince of Egypt. My goodness. Prince of Egypt was such an outstanding production.
Yeah.
It's a masterpiece.
Isn't that's kind of the gold standard, right? When we think about biblical
as far as it was what, and it's sort of funny, because of the whole thing, but it really was to animation what the Ten Commandments was to historical fiction for its time.
Even to the point of taking some key themes from Ten Commandments. Like if you watch them side by side, Ten Commandments is a much longer movie, but you can kind of tell that like whenever Ten Commandments sort of innovates on the biblical narrative, you can tell that they're saying, okay, we got to Hollywoodize this story, and I would bet that Ten Commandments was a reference point to them to how to Hollywoodize the Moses story.
With lots of creative interpretations and expansions, but trying to keep thematically.
Nowhere near as many as that Noah movie, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Oh wow.
And I didn't watch the Noah movie, but just reading about it, a lot of it wasn't even like biblical, like in terms of it was taken from the Deuterocanonical stuff. So it was
a lot of creative license went into that one.
There were golems apparently.
The children of the angels and men are giant rocks, apparently.
Children of God. I mean, the children of God are such a fascinating topic because they're hotly debated within Christianity. So,
and by every branch too. I mean, like I've met
some
people
have merely
of every
stated
stripe.
that the children of God were just the good Christian people, descended from Adam, and the children of man were all of Cain's descendants, and they intermingled, and that was the problem.
Yeah.
And there are other people who contend straight up that in that passage they were just straight up talking about angels.
And that's the first thing is called. I think it's called the Sethite hypothesis. I think is the name for it. But I don't know. I think that's too simplistic. The text well.
It's an easy way out.
And also, and not only that, the idea that Seth's descendants were automatically good and Cain's descendants were automatically bad doesn't necessarily make sense. Especially when you look at Cain's reaction to his punishment, right?
And the fact that God gave Cain a wife.
I don't believe that Cain was entirely unrepentant. I mean, looking at it,
same here.
I know that's
Same
off
here.
topic. That's off topic of the Easter story. I know that, but I don't think he was entirely unrepentant. I think he
Well, he's still speaking and communicating with God post murder in an intimate way where God's answering his prayer. I tend to think that you're right on that. That's my belief, at least.
Yeah. But I don't necessarily anyway. And there's a whole
that's getting into the theoretical plane. That's that sometimes it's not really something a lot of us, myself included, want to do, because it's just like, well, I don't want to say anything wrong.
Yeah. Well, no, eventually,
Yeah. But is it okay? Is it okay to in the arts? So maybe this is like a Christianity in the arts question. Like, how much leeway is good leeway for an artist? So if we kind of agree that Prince of Egypt is a really like high standard of art based on a
good
Christian
movie,
story. Right, it's a good movie, but it does take its creative licenses. The Noah movie takes creative licenses that feel like it's completely thematically different. Like, it's about environmentalism, and the biblical story of Noah is not a 90s environmentalist, Fern Gully movie. So, and how much of that how much of that would apply to, like, so maybe like for stuff like the Sons of God, maybe the point of that is, if you try to say the Sons of God are a specific thing, you're coming up with an answer to something that's kind of cool because it's mysterious. The Sons of God are almost cool because we don't know exactly what that's referring to. So if you make them rock monsters, you're going off of even like a biblical adaptation into
here's the
weird sci-fi fanfiction.
If you're gonna do something where it's like, okay, that Sons of God passage in Genesis, and everyone's hotly debating it. Well, what if this actually was talking about angels or whatever, and then you made a story about that? I'd actually be kind of okay with that if it wasn't actually about any like actual biblical story, and it made no pretension of being one, and B, it made it clear that this was merely a what if scenario and not like oh, this is what actually happened.
I feel like X-Men does that. Like X-Men does that with Apocalypse, where they say Apocalypse is the inspiration for the Gospel of John, where they don't say Christianity isn't true, but they're doing like a fantasy idea with a Christian theme. So because it's so fantastical, I can interpret it as fantasy. And I don't have to interpret it as, oh, this is our Bible commentary. We're interpreting the revelation of John as a mutant bad guy with big lips.
Well, I think when you get down to, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Runaways series, spoiler alert on a 20-year-old comic. The big villain of the first story arc are actually the B'nai Elohim, the Nephilim, who are and the thing is that the members, like the Runaways' parents, are all cult members. They're like part of this ritual cult to like re-empower the Nephilim so that they can storm the gates of heaven, and then recreate the universe with the cult members as kings of the universe. And so when the kids are runaways, because they're not going to be part of all of that because they think their parents are corrupt.
That's an example of using biblical elements to tell a completely different fantasy story, kind of like making Spawn.
And like nobody, and Spawn's a good example. Like nobody believes that's a real claim, like a real theological thing. Anybody who does is looking for an excuse to hate the Bible anyway.
For me, as a Reformed Christian, I'm actually more offended by realistic portrayals of Jesus than I would be any kind of like taking another character and making it into a fantasy thing. So like, as far as I see it, any character in the scriptures that's not God himself is fair game to have a fictional story with them, but I think obviously be historical figure. You want to be true to who they were as a person.
Yeah,
so that's pretty fair.
Yeah, Jesus is the one character you can't have an artistic license on because he's the central character in God Incarnate. You can't really have
you don't want to put words in God's mouth. That's not good.
I'm curious. How do you guys then, maybe like if we each take turns, how do you guys see this in terms of, I guess this would depend on whether you have a personal conviction about representation of Jesus in art or not. How do you guys feel the Easter promise does of having Jesus involved in a story, taking some moderate creative licenses, but trying to balance that with like not coming up with a Jesus fan fiction? So maybe like Fly Fox. Do you feel like the Easter promise goes too far in having Jesus do things that aren't described in the? Oh, we lost Fly Fox. Dang it. Okay, he's back.
He's back.
He was offended by the very question.
I was offended. Right. So, would you say the Easter promise goes too far with Jesus doing things that aren't described in the gospel, or do you think it strikes a good balance between having him as a character in a new story, and I don't know, not like they don't have him do anything weird like befriending a dog or anything?
Well, it's my personal conviction. I don't hold anybody else to it that any representation of Christ in a visual medium is a sin. Now, that's my personal conviction. So, but I don't even. That's not something that I push on anybody. For instance, we have a nativity set that we put out during Christmas because that's something my wife likes to do. So I'm not a big dogmatic person when it comes to it. So as far as the representation of Jesus, it actually is one of the things that bothered me as a kid was Jesus always seemed so milquetoast. Like he usually has the most bland design. He usually has the most unemotional voice actor. Usually it's sort of a middle tone and very, very low,
Mr. Rogers.
Yeah, exactly. It's Mr. Rogers. And I don't think that's good. Yeah. I think that so that actually offends me more than out there.
Funny you should mention that, actually, because back when I was a kid, I was also exposed. Do anyone remember the Archaeologist time travel series?
Yeah, The Greatest Adventures of the Bible.
Yeah, The Greatest Adventure.
Yeah, because here's the weird thing, because when I was a kid, I saw those and their presentation. I actually thought, watching all those things, I thought Jesus was just a character in a list of characters, because they're all given this kind of equal prominence in their presentation. And so I actually got the mistake that Jesus was just a character, not the character.
Right.
They're a collection of Bible stories. They don't get too much into the significance of the Bible stories in Greatest Adventure.
Right.
Weird.
Well, it's like I don't know if you guys are what age groups everybody has, but the Story Keepers was a thing when I was kind of young, and that one sticks out in my mind as being like the perfect example of just like a bland voice actor. Like just every time Jesus appeared on the screen, it was like you were listening to an audio recording of the Bible.
And that was actually a pretty acting. Yeah, I remember that. I remember fast forwarding the Jesus scenes when I watched Story Keepers, because the Story Keepers stories were very engaging because they're basically trying to survive Roman oppression.
Right. And the central point of it is that they're telling stories about Jesus, but then there's almost no life to those. So I guess I'm sort of this weird contradiction of like, having come to these reformed convictions later in life. Like I have all these thoughts from before then where I was always like, man, why isn't Jesus cooler in these? And
can't Jesus be cooler?
As an adult, I'm like, oh man, why are they breaking the second commandment? What are they doing that for?
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, you'd be intruding. You'd be intruding on an area you shouldn't.
Yeah. Right.
So I'm sensing like kind of like, so I'm Reformed also actually, and I kind of come down on the camp that I don't believe in any depiction of the glory of God, like God as transcendent, right? So I couldn't paint the the Transfiguration on the mountain, because in the Transfiguration Christ reveals his glory, and kind of the whole point of the glory of God is that you can't see it. Like Moses gets a tiny little glimpse of it, and according to the Catholic Church, he grows horns, and according to other translations, his face glows for the rest of his life. Right?
And like
the whole point is that
that's not entirely accurate. That was a bad translation that they've since rescinded. The whole horn thing.
One of the downsides of any kind of visual depiction is that you're always going to be limited by that visual depiction, or what the limitations of what you can do.
Yeah, you'll always be limited to what you understand, and the thing about God, is that He is beyond our understanding.
That's one thing
so
that
it's kind of impossible to truly visually depict Him.
That's one of the things that comes to. I don't know if it comes from any particular religious background on it, but I think that it's an open secret amongst religious artisans, and I think it used to be known better, at least by people that did the art, that you're not actually depicting, Christ in the crucifix, in icons and all that other kind of stuff. It's just it's not the image of the invisible God. It's something that you can sort of kind of begin to get your head around, right? So
you're getting into the iconoclasm.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, because that's like, I mean, I've got friends who are Greek Orthodox, and I've got some friends that are Catholic, and it comes back to that same kind of stuff where this is short. I mean, it's the same way with like recited prayers. This is the beginning. This is the step one to the understanding that there is something beyond what you can even get your head around. It's not the thing itself. It's the thing that represents the thing that represents the thing.
Yeah, I'm reminded of that line from the movie Luther, where they look at a crucifix where Luther's worried about images and relics, and he still looks at
Zwingli. It was supposed to be Zwingli that was worried about images, and Luther was fine with. He was fine with the idea of images. Luther was concerned about images being confused for idols by basically an illiterate public.
Yeah, he basically said, "Is it really our Lord we worship, or the splinters of the wood and the rust of the nails?"
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But has anyone ever seen The Miracle Maker?
No.
It was a claymation version. It was a claymation / 2D version of Jesus' life, and
I have seen it.
And there are certain points. I think there are limitations in that and what you could do in 2D and like a claymation. But I like the depiction of Jesus in that because they kind of have they don't make Jesus more monotone. They make him look like a more proper representation of God on earth. Although there are certain types like limitations to that too. But it's one of the better ones, I think.
I mean, there's kind of been like two conversations here. Like there's the kind of basically there's the second commandment question, which I think everybody, even if you whatever side of it you come down on, you at least have to think about it. I think. And then there's also if you come down that a second a representation of Jesus wouldn't violate the second commandment, you still have the problem of, is this a proper representation of Jesus? Like I have the worst Christian cartoon ever. I think it's incredibly obscure, and I would present it as like an example of like everything awful in this kind of thing that like maybe like as a negative contrast to where I think the Easter Promise is actually doing a pretty good job. What's it called? I don't remember its title, but I remember it involves Jesus befriending a dog as the whole plot of the story.
What?
Marmaduke, was this a personal story?
I didn't know it as a kid. I discovered it as an adult, and I just hated it so much.
I think it's called At Jesus' Side.
At Jesus' Side, that's it. Yeah.
It's like a Dalmatian kind of dog. Yeah, I think it's all the dogs are talking. It's like 101 Dalmatians with Jesus.
Oh no!
Right, and then the dogs have a whole experience
that's so
of wondering.
bad. That really feels like blasphemy.
The cover image right now is a Jesus hugging the dog with another dog over his shoulder, with a giraffe and an elephant and a iguana, I think.
It's the peaceable kingdom. Oh my god.
Jesus is a Disney princess. He sings the song and all the birds come around.
Dude, I can't believe you even said that. Oh my god.
That would be pretty blasphemous.
I don't think it's blasphemous. It's just so bizarre, like having the animal, the typical animal characters, and trying to have them relate to the Jesus story.
I mean,
there's a porcupine in the story, or a hedgehog.
And that's one of the things. Go ahead.
I was going to say my takeaway is you can be well-intentioned, but if you're not considerate of what you're doing, your art's going to have the opposite effect of your intentions.
I think that's true for all art, whether it's religious or not. Because I mean, all art has to do with deep ideas, with things of. But even interior design has to do with what is comfort, what is home, right? So all art relates to ideas about our existence and ideas about our humanity. If we don't have a really honed worldview, if we just have half-baked ideas about what is life, I think we're going to end up with art that's also half-baked.
By the way, just so you know, Matt C., it looks like you've got your paintbrush or something on your live stream. You know, don't draw anything sinful.
Oh, it was a WB series where it's like taking like all the world leaders' dogs are become superheroes and like a superhero, and the dog behind that for some reason.
That was
that's a really good question.
That was a
frankly.
really prominent 80s to 90s thing, but I have no idea if people do it as much anymore.
I feel like CGI is starting to phase it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's contemporary. There's new 2000 teens Superbook has CGI Bible stories. The guy
they're still making Veggie Tales.
Right, Veggie Tales, and one of the guys who was on Veggie Tales felt dissatisfied with it, and I know that he's doing some Christian series that I haven't been following carefully. He wanted to do something that was more explicitly biblical than Veggie Tales was. I mean, there's always going to be a market for it. I just feel like the 80s and 90s in general were big animation decades, and so Christian animation kind of caught that wave.
I think that's probably a fair assessment of that.
Yeah, I only hear about Christian animation when I happen to go by a Christian bookstore, which doesn't happen very often since they're not so few and too far in between.
But we kind of got off topic though, talking about how, what we think about how the Easter promise does with representing Christ within it, and we kind of because we got off on the bigger topic of should Christ be represented at all.
Yeah.
So to redirect that around there, I guess I'll give my opinion since I'm the one talking right now. I think it did an okay job, but there were a few key lines of Christ's Passion Week narrative that they changed, and I dig it. Right. So. Like the whole idea that there's actually two parts of it. On the one side, he said this is my father's house to be a house of prayer, and you've made it a den of thieves. They changed it to a den of merchandise. Those are definitely not the same idea.
Or merchants, I think they said.
Yeah, or in either way, it's definitely not what the text is, right? Thieving is a very different thing than merchandising.
I'm pretty sure I've actually read a Bible translation that has that, but I can't remember which one it was.
I mean that could be. It could be like a Living Bible thing or something too. But
yeah.
But that was the issue. The other side of that too is the next scene, in that he talks about that the court of the Gentiles was to be for all nations, which is a very biblical idea. I guess it's a 1-for-1 on that particular aspect of it.
It's a biblical idea, but it's not in that biblical scene at all.
I don't think so. Yeah.
John 2:16 does refer to as a house of trade or a marketplace.
Okay.
Place of business. But I think this also has to come to the fact that I've seen so many fictional versions of the Jesus story that they're using particular lines, because the line a place of worship for the world does actually exist in the Bible. It's just not the line they tend to use in fiction or in the media presentations.
Right. And that's one thing. I mean, because the real point about the whole reason that the marketplace, that the the money changers were driven out of the temple wasn't because they were changing money, wasn't because of the trade practices, but because they were interrupting the ability for the nations to seek Messiah, right? For the nations to seek communion with God, and that was what Jesus was getting after the Pharisees and the Sadducees about. That's what Jesus was getting after the priestly class about. That's what Jesus was getting after, you know, the all of that stuff was about, you know, the religious elites, you know, keeping people away from God, and that's sort of a big deal. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I mean, and
I
that
noticed that was a bit weird,
and that may not have been. Well, yeah.
Like,
And the
Jesus,
camels.
you realize you commanded us to do this, right?
Well, there actually is a reason for that, because for people who couldn't actually bring the animals with into the sacrifice area, that was a good place to trade in exchange for it. Because if you sold your animal where you lived and brought the money to buy something there, you could do that as a reasonable trade.
Right. Well, and
like my read on that scene is what's specifically bugging Jesus is that it's a house of it's supposed to be a house of prayer. It's supposed to be a holy place, and it's being humiliated or kind of denigrated by all of this going on. They're not recognizing like the specialness of God's house.
If they would have just moved that whole temple business outside of the walls, you know, and left the court of the Gentiles alone, I don't think that would have been like an issue, not just in the story, but in the actual narrative.
Right, and haggling over the price of your sacrifice for your sin right in the temple, probably not the most honoring thing to God.
But especially because the whole point of the court of the Gentiles is like, okay, so you know, you can't come in unless you're a Jew. At this place you can. So if you want to find out what Judaism is about, you come to the temple, ask some Jews, what is up with your God? You know. And that's what the whole point of that outer court was.
Yeah.
Do I hear a little baby running around?
Oh yeah, that's my guy. He's running around the house.
That's awesome. Yeah. Other than that, though, I think they did a fairly decent job of a lot of the portrayal of the Passion story. It was kind of boilerplate. It wasn't. I don't think it was terrible.
I think that especially like the crucifixion scene for a children's film was just about as brutal as you could make it without it being gratuitous. You actually show the hammer being swung down into it, and as we all know, sometimes what you imagine is going to be more visceral than what is actually depicted. So even showing and suggesting that a hammer is nailing a nail through a wrist or a hand is
not once but twice.
Yeah.
Yeah, they actually set that up pretty early on.
Yep. The thief in the first act. Well, and like that one was really interesting too, because like they actually had the nail on the dude's wrist before they had. I was just like, how much of this are we gonna see in this cartoon?
I never saw it as a kid, so I wouldn't. Yeah.
They tried to bring that up with repeating the phrase, in a little while you won't see me, and then in a little while you will see me, which I think is basically it's a paraphrase of a biblical quote, But I think it's following the intention of the real quote, but simplifying the language a little. So there,
16,
I think
right?
that was sounds right. Yeah. So it's maybe like the same problem we talked about earlier, where Jesus isn't much of a character, but watching it as an adult, I definitely picked that up. Watching it as a kid, I think the only thing I picked up was I didn't like the crucifixion scenes in particular. So I probably wasn't looking. Kids may in general not be looking for subtext. They might be looking, kind of like the plain meaning of the story.
I remember as a kid. I remember watching it as a kid, kind of wishing, "Oh, please!" Actually, as a child, I actually thought, "Oh, please hurry, please save Jesus." To the kids, like, go and warn him.
Right. There's a. Right.
Though I feel like that's got to be your first impression, no matter what. Like even to an adult, listening to the story. Augustine talked about this, where Augustine thought it was crude the first time he read the Bible, and then he'd keep returning to the Bible over and over again, and then he'd start picking up on the foreshadowing and the layers of meaning. But I feel like to a child or to an adult encountering it the first time you just pick up like the basics. He died, he came back, and then it takes a while for you the significance to get you.
That's one thing that they talk about with like a lot of like missions to tribal groups, especially people that are outside of the Western sphere altogether. They're presenting the gospel to them, like the idea that Jesus doesn't, he's this great king, obviously, and that he can be betrayed and that he can be conquered is something that people like have a hard time getting their head around. If they've been going through the gospel from the beginning, he's risen his place, he's gathered people around him, he's got faithful followers, and the idea that he can even be defeated is a shock to a lot of people hearing it for the first time. And I think some of us who grew up in the West or grew up in that narrative, I mean, and Matt, you kind of came to faith as an older fellow. I mean, I was basically raised in a church, right? So it was a different, maybe a different situation for me. But when you were, really ingesting the story of Christ, what was your take on that? Okay.
Ooh.
Right.
Which ironically it's something that Jesus censored the disciples for. Like, you guys have read the Bible, you're supposed to know who the Messiah is, and you do have to do like a lot of reading of the tough books like Leviticus and Deuteronomy to get some of what's going on. Like, one of the amazing things about the Gospels is they speak to a Gentile who's not familiar with this stuff at one level, but then the understanding Judaism adds a lot of, I don't know, like extra deeper significance to it.
And a lot of that stuff, like Matthew is very Jewish, right? I mean, like it's written in Greek, but it's written to a Jewish audience. This is our king. By the way, we killed him, but he's tougher than that. And and so that's one of the great things about that. But it's also, I guess, one of the things for me, and this is, coming from like the an essentially Southern Baptist tradition, was the idea that the real historicity of the Bible, the real visceralness of the body of Christ, right, like, was so present. So for me, like, I was worked at church camps for years, and I would tell people a verbal story of the Passion before the movie came out, and like, I'm telling you, the movie was not as bloody as it should have been. Right? I had some pacing issues with the Via Dolorosa specifically, but in terms of structure, but like the scourging was not as violent as the real scourging was, right? Oh yeah, it wasn't. It wasn't. I mean, Isaiah says that he was not recognizable as a human.
Yeah.
So the fact there was skin left on Vasil's face was chances are unlikely about that being. They ripped his beard out, man. I mean, I know you don't really carry a big beard on you, but I have from time to time, and it would not go well.
The fact that Jesus died quickly actually was somewhat unusual, because of the severity of the beating. Like, part of the point of the crucifixion was to create an agonizing spectacle of you. So
if people survived a scourging, they usually would live 3 or 4 days on a cross. So,
and then there's also the theological point of Christ giving up his life, it not being taken from him giving it up, not only in delivering himself up to be crucified, but also saying, Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit. He's giving up his life. They didn't take it from him, even to the point of when he chooses to die.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like the exact moment that he gives up the ghost, so to speak.
And he even said that was happening ahead of time, right? And people still didn't get it. And that's one of the things I come back to, is I don't think the disciples were stupid. I don't think the disciples, that Jesus didn't prepare them ahead of time for what was going on. I just think the idea that someone they loved so much could be taken from them thusly was so outside of their ability, they just didn't want to believe. Right? So like, I for a long time, I had thought that when the disciples ran from the Romans in the garden, that it was just fear that kept them away from the cross, and only John went back because he was brave enough. I think it was grief. I think they knew that Christ would be dead, and there just was no more hope left. And John,
these are guys that would have
couldn't let go.
Guys that would have.
I don't think it was. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, these are guys that would have seen crucifixions their entire lives. They would have seen these brutal murders and executions over and over and over again. And to see God, the person that they believe to be God, up on the cross, that's a stumbling block to every Jew, including the ones that love Jesus. They don't want to go see that. Here they feel at the lowest point.
Yeah, when Peter, his first impression when he hears about the crucifixion is, "Oh God, Jesus, that will never happen. I won't let that happen."
Yeah.
None of them were.
Peter especially struggled with that, to the point of boasting that he wouldn't let it happen, and then in real time finding out that wasn't the case.
Well, then we do that now. We think like, oh well, if I was there, deep down, I would have went to the cross. And it's like, man, I can't even read my Bible every day. Am I really to believe that I would have followed Jesus to the cross and possibly be recognized as one of his followers and have the same thing happen to me?
We have the luxury of hindsight.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is, we also, Jesus told everybody what was going to happen, but once again, Jesus had repeatedly said, well, I'm going to give you the sign of Jonah, by the way. 3 days dead, I'm back. Right? And nobody understood him. He specifically said, I'm going to be in the belly of the earth, and then I'm not. And his resurrection came as a surprise. because I just think it was so far outside of their concept, they wouldn't believe it. And like, I don't think Thomas doubted because Thomas wasn't a faithful guy. I think Thomas doubted because he wouldn't let himself believe something so crazy. You know? Because he's just like, no, man, there's just like, this is so far outside of reality. It's a world breaking event, and you're wanting to believe, you just buy that the world's broken. You know.
Yeah, also think that
in all the depictions of Thomas, I never get the depiction that he's just down for the sake of doubting. He's like, he just can't believe that. Like, no, that's not true. I will only believe it when I put my finger in his side.
Yeah. One, I think it was just that you know, he at the risk of stirring a pot here, what they lacked was the audacity to hope that things could be as good as that. The world, that the universe is as big as they want. I think in some cases that they wanted it to be. And so, you know, when Jesus shows up not dead anymore, you know, that's a world-changing thing. I mean, it really is. I mean, think about it, right? We're sitting here, and this is one thing I get crazy about. People sometimes say, if Jesus made all these crazy claims, why didn't everybody write it down? Why didn't everybody know it? And I'm like, dude, what are the chances that you would ever hear a story about a homeless former carpenter on the other side of the world, from 2,000 years ago? Like, they did tell everyone. That's how you've heard the story.
Fedora arguments.
Yeah.
Never mind that Jesus willfully wanted it to keep it secret for a long time. Tell no one.
Yeah.
I just realized something. Are there any movies that depict the 3 days of Jesus' death between his death and resurrection?
Yes, there is one. I'm gonna forget the name of it. Hang on, it's in the other room. I'll be right back.
Because for me, I would like to see that, because I haven't seen that one. So seeing those whole 3 days play out between is really illustrating the time. Because in the Bible, all we do is just jump to the death and jump to 3 days later. To really pound on you,
especially in this one where it was like a minute later.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't even think they. Now that I think back on that movie, they never even specified or pointed out that 3 days had passed.
No.
It just kind of happens.
Right. Well, and I think a part of it depends on. Well, I think some of it has to do too with the person's perspective you're telling it from, right? It's like the whole point of the Emmaus, right? The stranger on the road to Emmaus scenario, where one of the disciples who isn't named is just depressed, and he's walking away, and he meets this guy, and they start talking about the events of the day, and it's like, oh man, and they killed Jesus. That really stinks. And then Jesus incognito goes through Moses, goes through David, goes through the prophets, and tells them this had to happen. And oh, by the way, he's also God. In case you hadn't figured that out, oh man, you're confirming all these things I hoped were true. And man, he's if he raises from the dead, and then Jesus goes to bless the bread, and then he reveals himself and vanishes, right?
Yeah.
And so you have this thing where, like, that man's perspective was the total, that disciple, whoever he was, his perspective was a total reveal, right? Where somebody had basically a parlor room scene to explain the mystery at the end of it all, and that was that guy's super dramatic story, right? But for those of us who come to the story, in its completion, right? Well, of course we see it was always had to be that way, and that glorifies God. But the people that experienced it without knowing that it was going to turn out that way, or believing that it could turn out that way, still glorified God in the thing. So,
Yeah, I'm having a weird glitch where I'll pick up the bag.
Yeah. It never works that way. It never works that way.
Yeah, the only people who end up watching it for the most part tend to be Christian.
That's probably true. But in terms of the things, but I wouldn't say it never works. Because like when you think about like specifically the Passion, right? Thousands of people saw the Passion, millions of people saw the Passion just because Mel Gibson made it, right?
Catholics in general have had a art focus since the Council of Trent, like on purpose.
Yes,
you Protestants object to the image of Christ. We're going to make as more triple images of Christ. Yeah. with rare exceptions like Rembrandt kind of becoming the prototypical Protestant artist. It's kind of interesting to me that Rembrandt's
the only guy I allow to draw Christ and get away with it.
Well, that's very gracious of you, Fly Fox.
Well, Rembrandt deliberately went to Jewish quarters looking for Jews to draw. Yeah. So even though his portrait looks like kind of like the standard image of Christ, you can tell Rembrandt thought, okay, I'm going to find something as close as I can get to the original. He was completely fascinated in collecting historical objects. Like Rembrandt as an artist was more, I want to try to recreate this. Sometimes there would still be historical inaccuracies, of course, but you could tell he was on purpose trying to find props and things to draw that would make it as realistic as possible. And the Catholic approach was more, we explicitly want to put our peculiarly Catholic doctrines symbolically within the art.
Yeah, well, and I mean, right. Well, and the Catholics have a whole theology of beauty, what that means in the relation of truth to beauty, which I don't think is entirely inaccurate, but I think they lean a little too heavy into it, frankly. But
well, even in the Passion, you have these diversions into the stations of the cross that are extra, they're outside of text, and so like even in that you can see the approach to it was certainly a Catholic one, and my biggest problem
I think they had. Sorry, go ahead. I was just gonna say they also have, I think, Christ getting his face sponged off, which would be the origin of like the Catholic relic of the cloth that's supposed to contain Christ's image. Like there are things that are not biblical, but are a part of Catholic art history imagery in the Passion. That's all I was gonna add.
There are also things that were taken from the like visions that like medieval nuns and stuff had too, like the presence of Satan taunting Christ during the scourging and stuff like that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Huh.
Well, I mean, and that was very much part of Mel Gibson's perspective. I mean, he talked about it a lot. That I mean, it wasn't strictly evangelical, but it was explicitly glorify Christ by making something that the rest of the world wants to see, even if it's not. Yeah, even if it wasn't. Well, and it wasn't necessarily evangelical in the sense that, like, I hope people come in to believe in Jesus. It's more that, you know, that Jesus deserves the attention of the world, and I make movies. So I'm going to make this amazing movie that will draw people to pay attention even if they don't believe. So, and he's pre-Vatican II also. So that's a
He doesn't think there's a pope. Yeah,
he's old school. And all that means. But yeah, the movie I was talking about earlier that talks about the days between, it's called Risen, with Joseph Fiennes in it, and it's from the perspective of a centurion, the centurion that oversaw the crucifixion, and what it is when on Sunday, and it starts Friday night, after the crucifixion, and there's all these rebellions going on, and Joseph Fiennes plays a centurion who's like, most of his job is quelling rebellion in Jerusalem, and he's sent to oversee the end of this crucifixion. And it's very not dramatic overly much. It's just a day in the life, kind of a job thing. And then he gets a call Sunday morning that the body's gone missing. And so it's at that point it becomes like a first century police procedure where he's tracking down people that claim to have heard or known what might have happened to this body that went missing. And
I haven't seen this one.
It's really good. There's a couple of cheesecake moments. Well, anyway, not to spoil things too much, because at the end of the second act, he finds Jesus in the upper room with the disciples, and busts in to expect to find the body face to face with the risen Christ, and then like his whole world. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. I love this movie. He just like walks away from his charge, and he like follows Jesus like for the next 40 days until the ascension. All of that time, it truncates it. But and that's what's implied, is that he's just there until like Jesus is gone, and like he's the whole world shaken. So it doesn't. Fly Fox, you might not like it because it does take place in time that is not specifically mentioned in Scripture. And Jesus is an active character in those times, but I don't think he's out of character with the thing. And especially one of the big things that I love about the portrayal is that is that Jesus is very, not very, but it seems somewhat amused that this is how it had to be, right? And he's always got this look in his eye, like he knows something that people are. He's kind of having a fun watching people figure it all out. And Simon Peter is a big character in it, has a much larger role, as is kind of the voice of the believer to the voice of the skeptic. And Finney's plays the skeptic. I was like, can't believe what I'm seeing, and Peter's like, we can't believe it either. Isn't it amazing?
Oh, Draco Malfoy's in this movie.
Oh yeah, that is him. He's the younger. I forgot about that. He's the younger. He's grown up now. I didn't notice him. Didn't recognize him. He plays the like the guy who's lobbying for Josephine's job. Josephine goes missing. But yeah. I really enjoyed it. I really, really enjoyed it.
It's on my list now.
I mean, part of it is I really like police procedurals. So the idea of taking that like detective story and putting it into the story of Jesus, so it runs adjacent. And one of the other fun things is like one of the people that they round up to ask questions of is Andrew. And Andrew's just the guy they have playing him. He's just giddy with joy. He's just like full of he basically seems full of nonsense because he's just so like overjoyed about having discovered the risen Christ. So it's neat. It's a neat thing. It's a neat take on it. It did not get a lot of press. It came out the same year that Samson movie did that I didn't watch, but so it's pretty recent.
That Samson movie is the greatest thing ever made. We have to watch it. It's amazing, dude.
I haven't seen it. I bought it. I haven't watched it yet.
Believe it or not,
Yeah.
Well, there's the movie called Peter and Paul that was a mini series in the 80s, and it has Anthony Hopkins as Paul, and it's the greatest Christian film ever made. Yeah, that's interesting. It's seriously one of my favorite movies ever, and it's like a lot of the dialogue and the things that they say is straight out of scripture, and it's like pretty faithful, and like it's pretty legit. I mean, it has Anthony Hopkins in it, John Rhys Davies, like a bunch of people that you'll recognize. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, and especially
I think that's probably
Paul,
fair.
Especially with Paul, you're getting a wealth of care of motivation and knowledge about who he was as a person and his inner feelings. And I mean, I think that's like an actor's dream.
Anthony Hopkins once played Apostle Paul.
Yeah, we were just talking about that.
Oh yeah, that's the series Fly Fox referenced. Yeah.
I did not know that either.
Yeah,
have you guys seen the two? Okay, have you guys seen the two recent Bible series that came out? There was the Bible in AD a few years ago, and then there's a new one coming out right now, and the title escapes me, but it's like the biggest budget Bible series of all time. Great.
Oh yeah, I remember the mini-series that was just simply called The Bible. I didn't like that one.
That was very fan fiction-y, I think. So
that's the one that Downey did the producing on?
Sorry?
Oh,
I heard someone say something about producing.
I was thinking, is that the Bible miniseries, was that the one that Roma Downey produced? And her husband?
Yes. Yes, it is. And her husband is the guy that produced Survivor. I forget his name.
I hate that show.
No, I've never seen the Bible thing. Like I said, I don't usually watch a lot of that stuff. So
I don't like it. So I guess something that got referenced is artistic direction, evangelical purpose, and maybe like teach the kids something purpose. Yeah. And something that's always bugged me is sometimes I'll see a piece of Christian art that does a good job at one of those things, but never all of those things. Like for me personally, I've never read like a comic book adaptation of the Bible where I think the changes are effective. Like I'm of the opinion that kids are smarter than we think they are. So if you give them the tough language, they may not pick up every word, but they're smart enough to kind of figure out the thrust of it. So you don't need to dumb it down.
I actually have seen a comic that did that.
Okay.
And what it was, I don't remember the name of it. I don't have access to it anymore, so I can't really talk about it in specifics. There was a comic series that my grandmother found when I was like 7 or 8. and they were done up. It wasn't like it was supposed to be like direct retellings of Bible stories. It was kind of humorous, right? So it was kind of the storybook versions of Bible stories, but it got the narrative across really well. And so it was kind of like one of those things where I understood the plot points. So when I went back to read, and they were like things like the Kings and the books of the Judges and things like that, like Old Testament history mostly. And then when I went back and read like in Samuel or Chronicles or whatever else, since I knew where it was going and I had a basic intro of the characters, they weren't just like, they weren't just like words on a page. They weren't just like names that didn't have any relation to me. Like, Jehoshaphat was somebody that I could relate to, and I understood Ahab and things like that that I don't know that I necessarily would have in the same way. And it was just like a children's book, but it was sequential,
Yeah.
So
the first comic I ever drew, before those dirty Calvinists corrupted me, was actually an adaptation of like the crucifixion story, and I haven't thought about that in years. But I remember drawing that, and I was must have been in high school.
I remember drawing a picture of Jesus, and I wrote, "The nails hurt, but he's happy because he knows he's going to rise again," on it in my kid letters.
That's such a marm.
The nails must have hurt. I don't think anything else hurt that bad.
That's a very, yeah. I mean,
I felt like I had to justify why Jesus was smiling on the cross, so I wrote the explanation.
A little weird, but at the same time, how is it? The glory that was set before him, endured the cross, despising the shame.
I guess my closing thought on the Easter promise would be, I actually admire it for attempting to make something that's a quality piece of children's, animation entertainment. I think that's like the missing dimension. Like some people focus so much on the doctrinal correctness part of it. I think they forget the make art part of it. And then for Hollywood, I think the problem is there's let's make a crazy work of art aspect to it, and then they just go off into La La Land, and either they make something that just doesn't quite mix. Either they make something that's directly heresy, or if it's not directly heretical, it's at least a little weird and hard to approach as a Christian. So I feel like one route for a Christian artist is just make art that won't run you into these problems. Like set it in Narnia, and then try to express your Christian faith in Narnia, and you don't have some of these problems.
See, that's the approach I definitely favor.
Yeah,
me too.
But if you do set it in the Bible, you're going to have this. I also have to have a Sunday school teacher hat on, and I don't think that necessarily means you won't be a great artist as you make it, but you are going to have to take seriously both the both like the catechism part of it and the art part of it. And I think the balance of that is really tough because it requires, really careful thought and work in two fields.
Go the Ben-Hur route.
It references it, but not. It alludes to the events, but they don't directly intercede. It's not a Bible story. It's a story set during Bible times.
One of the most interesting, and this is a real bunny trail. If you mind me ending the show with one, any of you guys seen the movie Hail Caesar?
No.
With the comedy, right?
Yeah, it was definitely it was a comedy about the golden age of Hollywood.
Oh yeah,
and communists, and it was the Coen brothers really get the lampoon communist Hollywood, and it was amazing. The MacGuffin of the movie is that the studio that they work for, I can't remember the dude's name right now. They're trying to make a movie about Jesus that uses the centurion at the foot of the cross as the Ben-Hur type character, right?
Oh, George Clooney.
It's like The Road, right? But it's George. Yeah. So that's the whole premise, is that they're doing like the robe thing, right? And meanwhile, this guy is getting up with all these crazy communists and whatever else. But the one of the interesting things about it is that Josh Brolin plays the enforcer for the studio, whose job is, controlling the vices of these evil people that make movies.
Wait, so
they
you're
can
saying,
make.
so you're saying he's the one that keeps everything in balance?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
And so that they're, yeah, he is. Well, he's marginally faithful. He's faithful, but he's faithful. He's very Catholic. Goes to confession. He believes it. He doesn't understand it or study it, but he believes it. So there. So, but yeah, one of the best scenes in the movie is he brings in this ecumenical group, right? And so they've got, a Protestant, a Catholic, a Greek Orthodox, and a rabbi, and they're talking about the portrayal of Christ, how serious they're taking it, that they don't want to offend anyone, and they want to be faithful to the faith traditions that are there. And it's a hilarious scene. It's one of those things too, where you're talking about the balancing the Sunday school lesson with the the catechism book with the film, with the art. And that was a thing, I think, that it wasn't just a plot point in the movie. It was a plot point in the movie because it's something that was really done, right? And we had those movies like Ben-Hur and The Robe and the Ten Commandments, where people were, understood that the viewing public took it seriously. I don't know if the viewing public takes it that seriously anymore, but I don't think that negates the importance of the artist needing to be that editorial voice for himself. Because if we as Christian artists are taking our faith seriously, and the things we do, are hopefully our effective work and sacrifice to the Lord, right? We want it to be. I know, and even in my silly superhero stories, I think all stories are metaphor, and so when I'm talking about superpower teenagers, I'm really talking about what is life and what is our position in that, and what does free will mean, and all that kind of stuff. It's not just a.
I think the word you're looking for is edifying.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize I was looking for it, but yeah, you're right.
I actually had a word for that. I wanted to, earlier years ago, I had invented the term edifatainment, although I'm not sure if that applies anymore.
Yeah. That's fun. I like it. I don't think anyone would understand it, but I like it.
Edifatainment.
I put that up with you, catastrophe, for good palindromes.
Yeah.
No, that's not what a palindrome is. What is it? What is it when you put two words together to make new word? That is palindrome.
Portmanteau.
Portmanteau. That's it.
Which actually, well, that's a derailing. Portmanteau has a fun word origin that I can tell you a story about some other time. Totally off topic. Yeah.
Hmm.
And I think there's.
No. Right.
I'm reminded of what when an atheist person said on an offhand topic about artwork. We talked about Star Wars. He said the reason, like he's talking about the Star Wars new series, and the primary reason why religious entertainment doesn't work is because it lacks, and here's a liberal word, authenticity. It lacks that certain creative spark that all creative works need.
Well, except that I don't think that's necessarily true. I mean, you even
yeah.
Well, I mean, I think even like you I don't know if any of you guys. I know we're trying to wrap up, but have any of you guys seen the Flywheel movie? That was the first movie that I can't remember the name of the church that did like Fireproof. Whatever.
I hear about it.
Yeah. It wasn't good, but it was really sincere.
Yes.
Right? It was super authentic, but it wasn't very good. I mean, the acting wasn't good, the cinematography wasn't good, the film stock wasn't good, the lighting wasn't good, the makeup wasn't good, the plot was intriguing, but the story wasn't good. But it's also super on the nose. And
that's a problem with a lot of Christian movies.
Well, and like a lot of Christian movies, they pull all the stops out for the super happy ending, right?
I noticed that.
Like with Risen, pretty much got a super happy ending, sort of, kind of. This Easter Story has a pretty happy ending, because it ends with Christ.
Yeah, it wouldn't make sense for it to not have a happy ending,
And I mean, and I think part of the payoff. I think part of the payoff is it's very focused. And second of all, you have, just before the end, like the crucifixion scene is heavy. It's heavy stuff. And a lot of Christian movies won't get into the real gritty of it all.
Yeah.
And that's the part that I think that they miss out on, is because they won't lay the stakes as heavy as they need to be. To make you got to earn a happy ending, man. You got to, or it's just a comedy, and you can't take anything seriously.
Like, this might be a problem with the Christian Hollywood complex in general. Flyvlogs would know this, but Apologia has covered how once Hollywood figured out they could make money on Christian films, then there kind of became a cottage industry of, like Hollywood makes formulas of how to make movies when they think they can make money off of something, right? So then not only is there like a God's Not Dead, but then there becomes a cottage industry of making more God's Not Deads at over and over and over again after that. So that's a careful thing where like there's also like there's like a secular world that recognizes they can make art and make money too doing this, which sometimes that means we can get like a DreamWorks saying, hey, let's make a really good Moses movie, right? But there's like what am I trying to say? It's not like it's bad if an atheist or like just maybe like a studio that doesn't have a religious affiliation wants to make religious art. It's just a caution that they can have good art or bad art coming from the secular realm as well. So don't get caught up in, I don't know, like the secular this is how things are done in Hollywood ways of doing things necessarily.
Well, to get into Christ being king over all things, God, all truth being God's truth because he made it to be so. Whatever is true and beautiful is true and beautiful because God made it to be, regardless of who makes the art. So that should motivate Christians to be like, how about I be true and beautiful in my art and not worry about, is this going to appeal to my Christian audience or not? But how about just be true and beautiful in your art and let that shine through, because that's honoring to God as much as is thinking that a Jack Chick track is going to be the next big thing.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, I'm a big Jack Chick fan, but.
Yeah. And I think that's a big thing. We've talked about this on my religion streams I've done on my channel a lot too, is the idea that subtext of art is not always apparent to the patron.
Yeah.
But that we need to make sure as artists and creators that we are building that subtext authentically. the background that we do ahead of time, and the fact that if we are serious about our faith, that we're living our faith into our art, and then just like in nature, God is in charge of the increase. I don't think we want to hide our light under a bushel, but we shouldn't light people on fire either.
Well, we live in a world where Pilgrim's Progress has already been written, so therefore, let's try to do something different. Like you can't beat the best. So
that's a good point.
Screw tape letter.
I never knew what a big deal Pilgrim's Progress. Well, like I got an edition of it where like the scholar explained what a widely printed book it was. It was basically standard reading for a few generations of people, like Little Women.
That's underselling it, Marm. It was a couple hundred years.
Right.
Oh yeah, that's been recently remade.
You had a copy of that and a copy of the Bible.
Oh yeah, the Pilgrim's Progress has been recently remade into a 3D animated movie.
I saw that. Yeah, I was a little worried by the quality of the animation, but I'd be up for, I don't know, like live reaction streaming that sometime. They'd actually probably be a lot more sensitive about.
I'm glad to have read that entire book. It was a good one.
So I think that movie is available for free on Redeem TV, which is a free app from partly sponsored by the Christian History. If you guys want to do a watch.
Oh, we lost Fly again. Mid-sentence.
Dang.
I think
it just keeps happening.
Yeah.
There he is.
We might have to do a thing where we do like a riff tracks, a setup where instead of showing it a thing, we just go ahead and say, when you see this happen, start your copy.
Yeah. So if I could just give my closing thoughts on the movie we watched today. As far as the importance of being earnest, if you will, they clearly had a desire to make a quality product. Obviously, I made jokes about the animation lacking and things like that, but budget matters, and I think you can tell the quality of it by the backgrounds, hand painted backgrounds with where the perspective of the backgrounds was dead on. Clearly a talented artist was doing those. They were putting time into those, and they put a lot of effort into it. And I think that speaks to the intentions of the artist. So the theology was good here and there, and while I have my disagreements with the concept in general, if you're gonna do it, at least do it quality. If you're gonna sin, make it a good sin, right?
Boldly to quote Luther. Good.
Yeah.
I sense a debate stream topic for a future series. All right.
Yeah.
Pull out. Okay, let me pull out my copy of the Council of Trent. We're gonna redo the whole Reformation right now.
Well, if we do that, we've got to make sure we invite some Catholics.
Right.
I mean, we're an all Protestant group, so it doesn't really, and then we can have some
the entire time.
If you have some an Orthodox guy on the sidelines to just shake his head at both of us. So. Yes, that's very true.
Right. But we have the truth on our side. And a bunch of offensive Luther quotes.
Okay. I'm going to just go ahead and say that I'm not convinced of that. I would rather be on truth's side than have truth on my side.
Oh, Jesus juke, eh?
I mean, this is, I'm just getting tangential. I'm firmly Protestant, but I'm not going to pretend that I am right. I believe I am, but I'm not going to pretend that I am. You know what I mean?
I'm just passive aggressive about it. I'll just super chat them the entire 95 theses so they can't be mad at me.
I don't know if that's comes from not being reformed, but yeah, you know, just, probably. Right. But no, I just I was very nearly a recognized Calvary Chapel minister. So that's the fellowship I'm most closely theologically.
Well, I was a deacon at a Reformed Baptist church, so what you gonna do about that? Ugh.
Yes. His mute mic's still muted. Maybe he left to go somewhere. Could be, and he's not even here yet.
All right, I'm back. So, you want my insight on it?
Yes.
I thought it was okay-ish. The stuff that the parts of the movie that were more or less closer to the actual biblical accounts, I liked that stuff. The stuff with the kid when, isolated from the grander narrative, I think that was all right-ish. As much as the slavery subplot had absolutely nothing to do with the movie, I actually liked those like two dopey bad guy characters. They were funny. They were really animaniacs, and that's actually kind of really out of place in this otherwise ostensibly serious story, but
yeah.
They were fun. That's really just about all I can say on the matter, to be honest.
That makes sense. Like, some of it is like evaluating something on its own merits and then evaluating it like compared to something else. Like, this is miles ahead of some really cringy children's animation, but like being a solid. It's like the difference between solid and great. Like something solid, it's an admirable effort, but I think greatness, it has to maybe like I think what defines greatness is what can you take away from it that is so powerful, like it almost like makes you want to make something powerful to continue expressing that. Like maybe there's an idea in there that was there and was brilliant, but that hasn't even like the idea of like sparks other ideas. I don't know. That just I'm dangerously close to getting into like my hour-long art history lecture, so I'll stop.
Yeah. There's just tons of material here that you just gotta not talk about.
Yeah.
I could get you to watch Angel Wars. That was a thing that existed.
Oh, yes.
I remember. That's something I do remember from childhood.
It sounds really awful, like Bible Man awful.
Let's see, for us 90s
it's
kids,
better than Bible Man. I can at the very least say that. But it looks like a PS1 cutscene.
Oh, that's hard. I hurt already.
It looks like a good quality Square Enix PS1 cutscene, but still looks like a PS1 cutscene.
like Final Fantasy VII kind of thing, huh?
Yeah, more like Final Fantasy VIII's CG cutscenes, but yeah.
All right, so we can have as many Second Commandment violations as Flyfox Pro can possibly stand. We'll just keep throwing them at him.
Angel War is weird because it's this weird halfway point between being its own thing and practically just being a fantasy series that kind of has allegories. But then they kind of throw that out the window, and the characters are explicitly called angels, and they try to these are biblical angels. It's just like they have spaceships. It's just like yeah, they got this cool armor. It's just like Yeah,
Wow.
it just it doesn't work when you try to make these characters actual biblical angels. It doesn't make sense.
Well, is anyone familiar with the comic book series Archangels, the saga from the 90s?
Oh yeah, I was
I read
actually
that.
I was just going to not mention it because we're trying to wrap up, but yeah.
That was very 90s.
Yeah.
Very, very 90s. Have like
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's as 90s as you can get, and it even has the Holy Spirit as a superhero.
Yeah, that
Basically.
gets into some
that's problematic.
yeah,
That's
dubious
problematic.
territory right there.
That's not okay. That's not okay.
The whole point is that he's non-locational.
Yeah,
Maybe that's not the whole point, but it's a point.
Yeah, you're looking at actual X-Men there.
Yeah.
No, you'll find it. It's definitely once you find it, you'll see.
The saga. Archangel's the saga. Yeah.
the demons look like they're straight out of Spawn. I remember that. That was
yes.
Oh, it's
very 90s.
The need to probe more of this Unitarian but once again,
Did Unitarians have any weird specific cartoons or anything? A cartoon about how Jesus is a really good person.
Now, were you guys okay? One actual question, Matt. Were you guys Unitarian Universalists? Because wow.
Wait.
I just have such a hard time even getting my head around the Unitarian position. I mean, just like the Bible's so blatant. I can't even understand reading the Gospels from a Unitarian position. I mean, it's just like I guess it makes sense. I'm just saying, like the Jehovah's Witness reading of the New Testament makes more sense to me than the Unitarians understanding the New. They're pretending they're getting in the Greek, but that's a different.
I'm
Yes. Yeah. I think that's probably true in all churches. I mean, you get to look. Like I've been doing a lot of listening to the debates down at Speaker's Corner in London, and I mean, and of course, everybody, not everybody, but the subject of the Crusades comes up a lot, right? And yeah, oh my god, yeah, those guys. But I can't. It's across the ocean. No, I mean, just like seriously, when people are talking about that whole thing and the ideas, like so much of the impetus for much of the Crusades has in the beginnings, there was legitimacy behind it because of the political environment.
Yep.
But also, like there was also this canonization of awfulness to justify, what could be argued as needful military action, and instead of resting upon a true just war theory and everything else, it just went crazy on it. And so that's one of those things. I think that once Christians weren't, and I think it's probably true in other societies too, but in terms of in Europe, once Christians weren't being hunted down and murdered, and suddenly could attain political authority, I think that this pull between the world and Christendom was a very real thing. I mean, you even go back to what was going on in the stuff surrounding the Gunpowder Rebellion, right? And in Britain and the 30 Years' War and all that kind of stuff, the really, really bloody parts of the Reformation, right? You had, different kinds of Protestants and Protestants and Catholics and, everybody just like burning each other at the stake as heretics. Like that's no reading of the Bible justifies that. None.
I mean, they had such a different worldview than us. It's a little unfair. Like everybody was killing everybody, Christian and non-Christian alike.
Yeah, no, I mean, I there definitely is an argument to that, and then the whole thing that the idea that that's why America didn't want to have a nationwide religion, want to have a nationwide denomination, so that the nation could be unified, in a different way, So I get it, that was just the way things were done. I get it that it was just the way things were done, but at the same time, I mean, you can't, we're a creedal faith. You can't go to the creed and find anywhere to justify that.
It's like talking about slavery. Like there is a objective truth outside of us where you can say slavery is objectively wrong as a moral absolute, and then but then there's also this dimension where I think people with a narrow, focus on Twitter, what's going on Twitter today, they'll know that slavery is wrong, but they won't know why, and so they'll scream, George Washington was a slave owner, right? But they don't have like enough context to say anything about slavery because they basically live in 2020. Basically, that's basically the point I'd make about the Reformation. Is you're right, but also like be careful not to. I don't know. Like, would we be better if we were raised in that time period, basically?
And yeah, I absolutely, and that's 100% true. But it's just one of those things. Like, I recently watched the BBC miniseries Gunpowder, about the Gunpowder Rebellion, right? And it is brutal and hard, and it grieved me because, nominally Protestant, like, government officials were hunting down, and it's just true. We're hunting down Catholics, and a big part of that had to do with because of the way what happened under Mary, right? Mary, that whole thing, because she was hunting down Protestants during her brief time on the throne, and it all kind of came out. There still were bad feelings about all of that, and it's a real messy thing, and it's normal. I actually believe it was prophesied. It doesn't mean that it's okay, and it's hard. It's hard to come to face that, and to realize that, like, the story of humanity is one of facing the image of God in our fellow humans. That's Yes, that's true. Mm-hmm. And well, I think a lot of that is I think that the society works under the same framework we saw active within the life of Paul, right? Where at the beginning of earlier in his career, he's spending time defending his, and it needed to happen. Earlier in his career, he's spending time in his epistles defending his apostleship. At the end of his life, he's talking about how, oh, by the way, I am also the greatest of sinners. And fully leaning upon the grace of Christ, because that is, I think we all, I think that is, it is. And I think that's one of the things that believers individually go through is realizing our, as we grow closer to the image of Christ, I think we have to understand how far away how much farther away we were and how far away we still are, is we are poor. You know, it's like it's 1 Corinthians. I think it's 1 Corinthians. You know, God revealed this glory in clay vessels, that we will know that His power is from God and not from us. Right? That we're just, you know, we're just dirt, because He is so surpassingly great. And I think we as believers and through the revelation of the Spirit in our lives and through understanding Scripture, we progressively understand that more and more and more. I think that is reflected in society as well, in a certain sense, where just as science itself is built upon the discoveries of previous generations, I think society, if it reveals more about moral discoveries and in ways that the moral universe becomes more apparent generation to generation. The problem is that I think that we're in a place right now where we believe, because we know more about the moral law, that we've attained the moral law as a society. But there's no humility to understand that we are this broken people that people were 1,500 years ago. The only difference is that we know that there's brokenness in ways that they didn't know there was brokenness 1,500 years ago. We're discovering more about human depravity now than we knew could exist then. We haven't attained. I think I don't think the basic human is any better than they were. I just think we understand that there is more kinds of depravity than we realized. And, you know, it's like the idea that slavery is a moral evil, even if it was sometimes, if it had been a normal thing in the past. Like the Bible talks about treating slaves well, right? And the idea that you can own another person, that's abhorrent. And I think with reason. Of course, I also think that, it's also, first century slavery was not that much different than 20th century employment in terms of how it actually works. Because chattel slavery didn't really, wasn't always the way slavery was. That's something people don't take time to realize either. But
it didn't necessarily have an ethnic component, like an Italian could enslave an Italian from a civil war.
Yeah, absolutely. And not just that, but the idea that, Jonathan Swift was in debtor's prison. He was a slave of the state because he couldn't pay his bills. So that was a thing that was super common up until the 1780s. And it's not that I think I want to clarify something, because I don't believe that society knows it's more depraved. I think society knows that more deprivation exists.
I like how the Catholic Catholic on YouTube distributes puts it that in his video on H.P. Lovecraft, is that the history of humanity is monstrous because men are monsters. We are evil because we always return to evil.
Yes. Yeah. That's kind of what I'm talking about. It's just that like, we look back and we can look at, although they did horrible things. And I think in previous generations, we realized, I think you look at the writings of the founders, especially the very religious ones like John Adams and George Mason, and they looked at human history as just the history of men violating each other, of just sin riding out across humanity, and things that we can look back now and say, even things that they didn't recognize as sin, we can say, oh, those were sinful too, because here's the moral law and how it violates it. I think that we can see that, but what I think our current society is unwilling to do is acknowledge their part in violating their fellow man's dignity. So that's really, I'm not trying to say that. I just think we can see more things as depraved, not that we can recognize our own depravity. I definitely do not believe modern man recognizes his depravity on general.
Nope.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, that's why Tulip starts with total depravity. I self-identify as a Calvinist. I prefer, it sounds cooler.
Yeah, that one cartoon really sent us down a lot of potential paths. So, all right, I'd love to. Yeah, I'd love to. So, we'll if you're watching this, feel free to make suggestions to us, and we'll try to dig them up. We might not always be able to show them. What I might do is I might do like a test run first. What happens if I upload this to YouTube? And if I get copyright struck, that'll probably be like a good clue. We can't stream it if no one seems to care. Yeah, I could create like a dummy channel to test it out. YouTube's actually pretty lenient about it, because they tend to just monetize whatever copyrighted content you upload anyway. So it's a little rare to get a copyright strike unless you're like deliberately trying to game the system somehow. But if possible, we'll watch it. Otherwise, we'll just watch it on our own ends, and we'll make it into a riff track for the movie itself. But I would definitely be up for this. You guys have been great. So all of you are definitely invited back. Thank you, Matt Krotz, for hosting the Number One Marmaduke Fan show on your channel. Everybody should subscribe to Matt Krotz, subscribe to Matt and Carl, Fly Fox and Artistic Layman. Do you guys have YouTube channels?
Yes,
I do.
Okay, I will link to those as well when I mirror this and send this out on social media. So it's been fun. Thank you all for joining, and thank you all who have watched and joined the chat. I really appreciate it.
Or before we go, I'd like to say one thing also out there. I don't know if anybody is going to sit and listen to all of our bantering, but I'm going to tell you that I don't want to necessarily speak for everybody, but I would wager this is probably true. If any of you guys out there in YouTube land want to know more or are curious to hear about our Jesus, hit us up, because we're not just out here to kill time. At least I'm not. And I'm not here to beat people over the head with the Bible either, but there is one truth. There's one salvation of mankind, the Lord Jesus Christ, who came to earth as a man and died and rose again with the power of the Holy Spirit. And you should get to know him. He's amazing. So if you guys hit me up if you want to hear more. So
it's our favorite subject.
Seconded.
Fantastic. Well, with that, what possible better ending could there be than a call to believe in Jesus Christ? Thank you all so much. We'll catch you later.